is really a kind of provocation. I'm interested in reconsidering how we can work alongside with microbiological agents. So that would be working with the non-human and also other living microorganisms through biological art practices. And the reason why I'm proposing that we do this is because it helps us think about different scales of life and time, and especially material. This type of artistic investigation, working with microbes, can actually help us challenge conventional forms of representation of digital and analog media in art production. And so this is really a contemporary way of rethinking representation in art and media. So what I'm going to do is explore this proposition through 3 examples of biological art projects I've worked on. One of them called The Living Viral Tattoos, the other one's The Crowdbook Archives, and WetNet. All 3 of these projects explore the creation of waste through the bioengineering of microbial agents. And this really is a way to reflect on changing ideas of time, but more importantly, in the context that we're talking about today, the importance of reflecting on ecology within artistic practices. So biological art, what is that? Bioart and biological art are their terms that we've heard earlier from our first speaker. But what is it? Well, I'm not going to give you a fixed definition, but what I can say is that it's an artistic practice that really looks at working with life systems as material, as the medium. So it's no longer about representing life. Artists actually work with life systems, especially through the biological sciences. This kind of interest in life systems and working with living systems can be seen as an extension of intermedia and interdisciplinary art practices since the 1960s, with the advent of land art and body art practices. So it's certainly not new. Some people have called the practice of working with living systems as bioart. I prefer to use the term biological art, just because it encompasses other types of fields of research other than art. There's a growing number of artists working in this field today, but access to science laboratories is still very difficult. And so I'm really interested in opening up access to this area of creation. Hopefully here in Colombia one day. It's still emerging even as a practice in Canada. So this type of practice really is a crossover between biological sciences and life sciences and art, and is still a type of practice that's yet to emerge in fine arts programs in universities, still emerging. So before I start talking about some of the work that I've been doing, there are a couple of issues that need to be addressed first, especially around the creation of art research and art projects working with living systems. So first of all, waste creation is something we all do as creative producers, whether we're working with digital media or other types of analog media. It's often hidden from view in research production. E-waste, for example, as we know, is produced and moved into landfill, where there is lead and mercury that is leached into the soil, and this of course affects various ecosystems. And this kind of leaching will then turn into a kind of fossil that will solidify for future generations to find. Hopefully there will be future generations to find it. So biomedia and digital media are producing an incredible amount of chemical and metal waste in the tools used to produce data in both the dry and the wet labs. So that's why I have an image here of the, we've got the e-waste and also the plastic waste from different types of tissue culture engineering work done in the wet lab. Secondly, rather than consider waste creation from darker visions of the Anthropocene as a doomsday scenario, generating global anxiety and guilt, or worse, apathy and denial, we can conceive of how new technologies may utilize waste creation practices and materials and reimagine them from a perspective of geological time. This would be a type of deep time of microbial life. UC Parika talks about this kind of change in perspective of temporality in his latest book that has just come out, where he's arguing, like Manuel de Landa, that we need to pull back and look at a larger frame and duration of time from the perspective of geology, and also what I'm arguing from the perspective of microbial lifespan. This kind of way of looking at time and waste creation is keeping with Donna Haraway's recent call for us to, what she calls, stay with the trouble. These are indeed troubling times as we are coming to terms with the era of the Anthropocene. So one of the ways that we can really talk about ecology and waste creation is to work with the very materials themselves and the types of bioremediation practices that they introduce. One of the key factors of survival and longevity for microbes in particular is their ability to bioremediate potentially toxic and polluted sites. So, we can have, currently there's an interest in engineering or bioengineering bacteria to remediate lead that's being leached into landfills and to come to terms with alternatives to incineration practices of bio and metallic waste. This is the current model of waste processing. Of course, these types of the residual metals end up going into landfill that leaches deeper into the surface of the earth. And the problem now is how to remediate it in such a way to remove some of those toxic metals. And there's a long list of toxic metals. I'm not going to give a lesson on that now, but I think it's important to note that various processes that are part of our media practice and the way that its waste is dealt with deals with these kinds of forms of processing. So waste incineration, oil refining, cooling systems, electrical transformers, all of these forms are generating additional toxins in the soil. So, this is a really prominent question. We can no longer just represent solutions for material waste and larger questions of ecology. We need to actually look at the materials we're working with as being part of that process. So living viral tattoos is a project I worked on, have been working on for a while. It began in 2008. I was a resident at Symbiotica, the Center for Excellence in Biological Arts, which is in Australia. This particular project brings or speaks to the idea of viruses as agents of waste creation, bioremediality, and also an alternative to imaging different modes of time and space. In this work, I'll show you the next slide here, skin that would have been thrown in the garbage after a breast reduction surgery was recuperated for the project. So it was donated for the project. And it was used to make a series of biological sculptures, video, and photographic works. These biological sculptures feature the use of a synthetic virus. Here it is. It's called lentivirus. It's a synthetic derivative of HIV strain 1. It's been used for 20 years in science laboratories to be a vector for markers that help scientists see the transport of genes through different cellular matrices. So using the lentivirus and different staining processes, I created the design of bruises on the skins. And the bruising really was intended to speak about the way that the virus can actually work as a form of damage. It can be pathogenic and alter our genetic makeup, but it can also regenerate it. So this kind of interesting duality in terms of the way that viruses work is very interesting to me. But more importantly, I'm interested in how this type of process embraces a type of waste creation from biological skin, plastics, and chemicals like bleach and ethanol, which are all used in the production of this work. The interesting thing is that synthetic viruses are also generated from computer sequencing databanks like BLAST, so they are both digital entities and biological entities simultaneously, so it's difficult to separate one from the other. They both work together. So the temporality of the work here actually exceeds the digital image, and the biological sculptures continue to be distributed through various waste systems. And the transformation of the materials have to be accounted for through a longer span of time, which is difficult to do given our production schedule in artistic production and exhibition. So that led me to the creation of Cryobook Archives. This work is a series of sculptures again, using the same scientific techniques and processes as the other one, but this time the donated skin is molded into one of the oldest forms of codex and information distribution systems, and that would be the book. As early as the 1300s, human skin was used to cover books as an homage to human life, and it was a practice called anthropodermic bibliopegy. There are still books in libraries around the world that have these types of books. I had leather stamps, custom leather stamps made with new designs of HIV by two other Canadian artists and HIV activists, Vincent Chevalier and John Grayson, and they designed new designs of HIV. This stamp was then imprinted into the skin, and the image that was rendered was both symbolic of the virus, but also of the virus itself. So no longer just a representation of HIV, it was HIV materialized. These fleshy books were then cryopreserved, and they are sustained potentially beyond the life of myself and other people who may be working in the lab with those types of cryogenic freezers. So you can see here, this is after the books were made, they were preserved, and then a special kind of display case was engineered with my collaborator David St. Ange from Montreal, and we created a portable library for the cryo books, and the books then can be displayed in gallery settings at a minus 40 to minus 80 temperature. So here's an image of the exhibition with them that was held in Dublin 2011. I do want to say, before moving on to this next image here, one of the problems of thinking about a longer range of time for these types of waste creation projects is that they're reliant on humans and electricity. And of course, we are very unstable. So I am very interested in the accident and death. And I'm certainly not an advocate of the transhumanist dream of agelessness and a disease-free world. Instead, I want to acknowledge the implicit accident, damage, and violence in the transformation and extension of matter. One example of this is that the cryo books were sent for an exhibition in France last week, and FedEx picked them up from the university. They were specially packaged on dry ice, and they were to be couriered overnight. The problem is that they never arrived. The box arrived, but the dry ice and the Cryobook Archives were not in the box. And FedEx could not locate the items anywhere. So despite the tremendous technology we have with GPS tracking, different information systems, these types of materials can still disappear. They can still be forgotten. And one wonders where they are now, how the material is decomposing. Are the cryobugs being eaten by bacteria on the floor of a factory somewhere? Or maybe someone intercepted them and introduced them to the organ trade, the underground black market that is flourishing around the globe right now. We don't know. So this is a big part for me of what the project is about. On another perspective on this issue of waste creation is spoken about in my project WetNet. And WetNet is a speculative project on how bioremediation can be applied in the future in artistic creation. So in this project, I have been looking at growing mycelium. Mycelium is the root system of mushrooms. I'm looking how to grow mycelium to bioremediate pathogens. I did this project at the University of Lisbon in partnership with Ectopia. I also am interested in thinking about how to reimagine the materials we use in both artistic and scientific production. So a lot of my thinking now is imagining potential futures for materials, imagining a science laboratory with tools made of bioplastics that biodegrade and are bioremediated in a lab system or lab setting that does not follow aseptic technique, which is certainly going against the paradigm of scientific research today. It's a speculative art project, an experiment to really think about how we can imagine a paradigm shift in the very way that we operate in the laboratory, in the kitchen, and the home, and introduce new models of research production in both art and science with these types of bioplastics and materials. So you can see here, I have made various science equipment. They're pipette tips and different types of flasks that are made in the form with agar. And the fuzzy parts you see in the photographs here, that's mycelium starting to grow and starting to decompose and bioremediate the instruments. This project was exhibited in Emergencias in Portugal, curated by Marta de Menezes. And in here you can see that there's an incubator on the left there that was used to grow and facilitate the bioremediation of the mycelium with the agar. And on the other side here, I'll show you a close up. In the Petri dish is the result of the experimentation with pipetting mycelium onto cells that had been virally infected with HIV strain 1. And what happened, interestingly enough, is that the mycelium overtook the cells and basically ate them and bioremediated them until they were gone, and all that was left was the mycelium. On the other side, you see the decomposition of the so-called science tools that are bioremediating into a big mess that can actually be thrown outside anywhere into the soil, and it will be bioremediated. In conclusion, oh great, well I'm ahead of time. In conclusion, I just wanted to say that the use of microbes in artistic production opens up new questions about materiality, ecology, and waste production and image making practices that cross over with both art and science. And this includes the life sciences and also information science. Expanding research literacy across art and science is needed to address waste creation from a geological and microbial point of view. There's been a white paper series just put out recently from Leonardo, and in this white paper series, the editors are suggesting that more efforts must be made to create collaborations internationally so that this type of practice can occur. And the editors are very much concerned about art schools, humanities faculties, and sciences to really attempt to enter into partnerships in order to create new modes of research, new vocabularies, new affiliations. This is needed so that the novel approaches to art and research can emerge for a generation of new creative models for addressing concerns of ecology today, and also for what is really an immeasurable future for not only creative producers, but citizens of the world in general. Thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it. And also I have a number of people to thank here, so, and if there are any other questions, please note my website, and also my email is there if you have any additional questions. Thank you.
Muchas gracias a Tangy, y recuerden las preguntas al final con todos los panelistas. Vamos a poner el equipo de vivo para continuar.